Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew and today we are doing the third part to this whole Godzilla HIYA Toys collectible comparisons. And today we've got, of course, it back for round 3. And we are going to be pitting it up against the S.H. MonsterArts Godzilla 2021. We're going to be doing another 7-rounder of this, Sculpt and Paint, Articulation, Size, Accessories, Price, Availability, and Packaging. Being sure that everything is fair and even, we're going to be doing this on a point-by-below basis as per usual. So, let's go ahead and start off. Round 1 is Sculpt and Paint, and first let's take a look at the heads and mouths of both figures. But really looking at the heads on both figures, this should already tell you the quality difference between the two toys. The HIYA Toys has obviously the better head paint, and the sculpting on both figures, at least the head part, is rather similar. But I gotta say, I prefer the MonsterArts, the mouth paint on the MonsterArts more specifically, just because of how vibrant of a blue it is compared to the HIYA. I guess it's just because I'm a sucker for vibrancy, and blue is my favorite color, so, the mouth on this blue is something I prefer from my own standpoint, but this, in my opinion, just looks a lot better executed. Next, let's take a look at the torsos of both figures. I've mentioned it like 3 times before, and I'll say it again. The HIYA toy suffers from the problem that even though that the dry brushing here is in the blue paint application, it's done really well. It's just, it looks like a vest because of the way that the arms are painted. Yeah, there's some mild blue paint here, which you can't really see on camera, but it seems to be more of like a paint issue, transfer issue, rather than something that was intentional. While the MonsterArts features some mild dry brushing, like across the torso area to where it meets the crotch, it actually looks somewhat decent. Although I will say, as far as like the overall points of the application, I will say this is slightly better. And also about the claws are rather even. The MonsterArts has more spread out claws, almost like he's grabbing on something, while this one has more neutral style claws. But the HIYA actually features a lot more dry brushing on theirs, while the MonsterArts just features the claw paint, and that's about it. Up-tracking back towards the neck area, I said this in my NECA versus HIYA review, is that something that both figures do pretty well is the necks. But again, the HIYA, in my opinion, got the paint wrong, because the gills are technically supposed to be glowing, not his neck, because they're literal gateways to his throat, while the MonsterArts doesn't really feature any paint at all except for the mild dry brushing right on his neck. But at least with the HIYA, the gills are much more pronounced than the MonsterArts. It's lost in the segmenting versus the HIYA, where it uses the gills to the segmenting's advantage, and when we actually go to the articulation, it'll look rather natural and flawless. Although I will say the application on the neck is a bit heavy-handed. It looks like nail polish. Next, let's look at the thighs of both figures, or I guess the legs, not the feet themselves. It's a slobber knocker for the HIYA, in my opinion, because while the MonsterArts does feature amazing sculpted detail, it's all lost thanks to the fact that there's no dry brushing. Well, I wouldn't really say lost, because shadows do make the detail very apparent, and when you rub your finger on there, it actually getting that little piece of fur off, it looks really good. The HIYA features really well sculpted details, although I will say the MonsterArts is a bit more defined, but couples that with paint and dry brushing. This is notes Bandai needs to take, because dry brushing makes a whole lot of a difference. And now we're going to look at the feet themselves, which the claw paint on both is kind of different, because the MonsterArts uses more of like a dark kind of brown dry brushing versus the HIYA, where it uses a very deep gray and almost blends in with the body, although the dry brushing is there to kind of save the day. But I will say I prefer the execution on the MonsterArts just because of the claw to the foot difference. So you can actually tell that there's some paint variety and not just one singular color. But if it had the dry brushing of the MonsterArts, then I would say that would be the dry brushing of the HIYA, then I'd say that would be the ultimate winner right there. And lastly, we're going to be taking a look at the tail, which, really thinking about it, MonsterArts has the best application for the tail as far as like just coloring the spines and it actually kind of like glitters onto the base of the spines to give it like a glowing effect, and it certainly is much more reflective than that of the HIYAs. But the HIYAs actually gives off more of a powerful glow effect because of the dry brushing that's on the sides of the tail and the overhead of the tail being like completely dry brushed from the where it meets the sides all the way to the tips of the spines. Yeah, it is true. MonsterArts does kind of feature some more kind of dry brushing. It's very, very mild, but it's so like unnoticeable on the bottom. And same thing can be said about the HIYA, except the HIYA has much better detailing on the bottom of the tail. So as far as Sculpt and Paint goes, I gotta give this to HIYA. Granted, yeah, the MonsterArts has much more defined details, but that's, and in my opinion, the better colored dorsal spines. I just realized I have glitter on my hands. But it's not enough to warrant the point. And that also being said, the HIYA just has the better movie accuracy, especially because that's like what a lot of people go for nowadays. A lot of people will prefer their movie accuracy over stylization because both of them are from the model CG, but this one is defined and stylized a bit by Yuji Sakai. This one was brought straight from the movie into figure form. And for that, and also the amount of detail, dry brushing, painting, movie accuracy, I gotta give it to the HIYA for this round. Next, we're going to take a look at articulation for round 2. And it's a lot more even than one would think. Both of them have ball joints here at the base of the head that allows for a fair degree of movement on both figures. More on the MonsterArts, but that's only because of joint of the placement of the ball joint, because this overlaps the segment and this underlaps the segment. However, both figures feature articulated jaws that'll one's on a hinge, one's on a ball joint, but both of them feature articulated tongues, which, as you can tell, they're really evenly matched in that category, although there is slightly more range on the MonsterArts. And next, we're going to talk about the necks, which this is the entirety of the neck articulation on the HIYA. It's pretty good. It slides around pretty nice, gives you a lot of great range, and just as I mentioned, the gills actually work in unison to create a much more natural looking effect, while the MonsterArts loses that effect thanks to the fact that the gills are lost in the sculpt. However, as far as the range itself goes, it has a ball joint here, the neck ball joint is down here, and it features, even though it's not really needed because it doesn't do much, there's one more cut down here that allows for some slightly additional movement. So you can kind of get a little bit more range out of it. And you can actually look straight up, while the HIYA's Godzilla can only look this far up on its own accord. So don't worry, we'll get to the alternate head. As far as the shoulders are concerned, both of them have a singular ball joint at the shoulders, and HIYA has one hinge at the elbow and a swivel hinge at the hand, while the MonsterArts features double joints at the elbows and a Hot Toy style, almost Reveltech peg, except it doesn't ratchet kind of peg that kind of goes like in one direction, and then you can kind of spin it and then can kind of go another direction. So I gotta say MonsterArts kind of wins by a little bit in terms of range. For the waist, the HIYA obviously has one singular ball joint that allows for some decent motion. Mine's still stiff because, again, it is a newer figure. I just got this thing like less than a week ago. While the MonsterArts features dual joints here and here that allows for some pretty good range of motion. Not much of a swivel, because if you try and swivel that thing, it'll actually pop itself out of socket and you'll end up with a bust Godzilla. But overall, I think that the two joints really work together well. For the hips, the HIYA actually does feature kind of like a similar style that NECA did with their Godzillas, where it was inside the socket, right? And it was just one pure piece that kind of like connected on a barbell style joint, so you can kind of slide it in and out of place, which honestly really helps with like the gaps, and especially because like that, if that was not closed off, guaranteed that would have been, that sucked. While the S.H. MonsterArts actually kind of does a similar quote-unquote thing, but I think it's like much different because the figure itself is kind of more hollow with figured out extensions for the joints, so as a result they got to close it up with some leg cartilage, and if you pull it back just far enough you'll end up seeing the gaps. But as for the kind of Godzilla Grundle inside, it's done really well. And as for the knees on both figures are double jointed, And as for the range, again, hard to tell because it's a bend at the knee. You know, you're not expecting too much range. Same thing with here at the MonsterArts, kind of get a little twist and spin. And the HIYA features a ball jointed foot that allows for a good rotation and a mild pivot, nothing too crazy. While the MonsterArts, again, features actually two joints, one at the calf, shin type area, and the other one at the actual foot. So you can kind of go back and forth there as you please. Next is the tail, and the HIYA features 9 ball joints that go all the way from the base to the tip of the tail, which allows for some really good movement. Down and up. Down is more than up is, because this is about as high as you can get the tail comfortably, unless you're going to rotate like part of it and then kind of start rotating like that. But comfortably, side to side is where you're really going to get the juice. And the MonsterArts can go up, but it doesn't really tend to hold its pose that well. I mean, you kind of get it to hold its pose. For the most part, you can kind of like segment it. Nothing too crazy. Nothing too bad. And and of course, it loves to pop off. So that's a bit of an issue right there. So overall, who wins the point in articulation? While both figures do feature a lot of the same movement in a lot of areas, and I will say in terms of range, they are comparable, but I find more range and more points of articulation on the MonsterArts than the HIYA toys, because for example, HIYA doesn't have the foot mobility that the MonsterArts does, and the tail can actually kind of go up while the HIYA's does not. And, you know, for a creature that's going to be tail swiping a 500 plus foot tall Hydra, aka Ghidorah, I want to get that figure someday, it's going to be hard for him to do so if he can't have the mobility, so the MonsterArts wins the point in articulation. Next is the round for size. And I know I've said this again and again in my NECAs and Playmates comparison videos, but the thing for size is that people are going to be wanting a 6-inch shoulder-to-shoulder, all in scale figure. It is true that the MonsterVerse Godzilla is the tallest live-action Godzilla to date, but if you are going to follow with scale on that, by that logic, all Showa-era Godzillas you are going to buy are going to be in this scale right above his waist, or right to his waist. So don't give me that whole scale garbage, because people want a 6 to 6 inch scale figure. Shin Godzilla from the MonsterArts line completely blew that away, and I think it's now the tallest Godzilla figure they've released as far as Godzilla himself goes, with the exception of the Kokyo Kyoku line, but that's like a spin-off of the spin-off line. Yes, the MonsterArts is a spin-off of the Figuarts line. With that being said, the MonsterArts 2019 keeps tradition and keeps him in scale with all the other 6-inch Godzilla figures. If you really need a good comparison, again, from the last video, here's the NECA Godzilla NES. And even though it's rather debatable if these two are even in scale, because we don't actually have an official canon height for the official NES Godzilla, they're in scale with each other. The HIYA Toys is a bit on the larger side. And I pretty much gave the argument that it's like in the 7-8 inch scale, which would rival that of the NECA Kong and its other figures in said NECA Ultimates line. That being said, I still got to give this point to MonsterArts for that specific reason. Even though it looks like the two are just barely in terms of overall height, he's actually like way taller. Like, here, let me give a good... Ow. Okay, never mind, he doesn't want me to. He just bit me. So, you know what? Point still stands is that, well, just like that, he's just a bit too big. For the average consumer who wants a 6-inch Godzilla, and only a 6-inch Godzilla, this is going to be your best bet. He's just a bit too large. So, point goes to the MonsterArts. Next, for round 4, we're going to take a look at accessories. And when you're the Spitfire Godzilla, you're going to get a lot of good accessories, right? Let's hold the phone on that. First of all, the HIYA comes with the signature atomic breath and an alternate head to obviously, put in said atomic breath. You just put it in like this, and you're all good to go. It also comes with an alternate neck piece to carry said atomic breath. Now, I made a bit of an error. Last time I said that this head would not work well on this one, and I even showcased it, but I was wrong. It turns out that you can do it, it's just gonna look a little odd. At least my own personal thoughts. But this and this are meant to replicate his call to arms scene, or his rebirth scene, as he fired his beam in King of the Monsters, or he dove underneath the aircraft carrier to shoot away Kongs on the aircraft carrier. And I'm not going to like demonstrate on camera because that'd be like the bajillion time I did that. But basically you just take off these. These are 3 separate pieces and the head. And you're going to put this on. And then you're going to put the head on, attach the atomic breath, and then he's just going to be looking straight up. He comes with alternate hands. That is it. How you put the hand on, rather simple. You just take off this hand. If it wants to wiggle out of there. Be right back. Okay, so I accidentally popped off the rod toy style peg and actually like separated the 2 pieces. So thankfully they can just connect on back together. But basically you just take off this hand from the ball joint, not the peg, or the Hot Toy Styles peg, because there's 2 pegs in there, and you want to just stick this hand on. Thing is, this hand is the same exact ones we got with the MonsterArts, and they're the same exact hands, or position-wise, that would come on these ones. Like, what kind of expressiveness does that give? These spread out hands should have been the accessories, but... And not to mention, he's glowing blue. He has a blue mouth. And he doesn't come with a heat ray, despite the fact that the other Godzillas from the Monsterverse have featured heat rays. The original 2019 wasn't even glowing blue fins. The poster color version also came with the beam. The Spitfire 2014, that also came with the beam. But this one, for Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the biggest movies of 2021, mind you, the movie that brought out the pandemic, blue fins, new paint scheme, and a blue mouth, and it doesn't even come with a beam. I don't know what it was with Bandai doing that, because they also did that twice with the 2001 Heat Ray Godzilla, and they also did that with the poster Noroshi 1993 Godzilla, which was just a repaint in 95 rebirth, mind you. Now, the poster version I can totally forget, because it is based on the poster, and he's glowing blue, but he's about to shoot the beam, so I can see why they didn't include that. Although they shouldn't have included like a little bat blast thing. But 2001 and this, you don't give the accessory what they are. They have blue fins. You advertise the 2001 as the heat ray. Heat ray. Where's the heat ray? Oh, there's blue glow. You're pretending it. It's a make pretend thing. This is all we get. I think I'm done ranting. It's pretty much clear. The HIYA, obviously, despite the fact it actually comes with a beam, wins the point. And yeah, we're just going to move on. So for round 5, we're going to be doing price. And on Big Bad Toy Store, we're just going to use the prices from there. The MonsterArts is like $77. $77 for this. While the HIYA is like $50. $50 versus $77. That's not even aftermarket. So, it's because of that, the HIYA wins the price in terms of overall price, because like, even then, it's not just BBTS, it's also just general market price. Because he's an import, it's going to cost you more. Next, we're going to, for round 6 at least, we're going to go over the point of availability. And the availability on both figures is a bit hit or miss. However, shockingly enough to my discovery, he was available at Targets. Him and the Kong. They were actually available on Targets in 21. I don't think they've hit Targets yet. When they do, that's going to be great. But as of right now, it's always been because of that sole reason that they were at Targets, not just exclusive to comic shops, which is where they're most common, but also at, major retailers go, he's actually got a leg up over the HIYA, so we're going to give him the point as far as availability goes. And the last round we're going to do is packaging, which I'd usually bring down the boxes, so let's go ahead and do it. So bringing out both boxes here, obviously both are closed off boxes, which as the consumer, you want to actually see what you're buying. Unfortunately, neither box have that. They don't have that clear thing where you obviously get to see what's inside the box. So when you go to buy the figure, you actually see what you're buying. Yeah, the MonsterArts features the clear backing. If I actually fooled somebody, that'd actually be really good. But yeah, it features like the top and the side. Granted, it doesn't like extend out to the whole thing. And even though it's all in Japanese, it's still English product. They can tell what it is. They can actually see the figure on the inside. And as you can tell, it's actually got something over the HIYA, which no matter which way you spin it, you can't actually see what you're buying. Because I gave the example last time, like what if my HIYA Godzilla came with a defect? And I was actually in retail and I didn't know how to do it. Versus the MonsterArts, I could actually see how the paint application looks to some degree. So with that being said, even though it's objective which one actually has the cooler looking box, because I'll say, both of them have epic looking boxes. I like the coloring on this one a bit more than this one. But he wins because he's actually consumer-friendly packaging. And so that is it. That is the bars. That is the points. Let's go ahead and tally them up. The HIYA actually won the point in terms of Sculpt and Paint. The MonsterArts won the point in Articulation. The HIYA wins the point in... Actually, no, wait. The MonsterArts won the point in size. HIYA won in accessories. The HIYA wins in price, and the MonsterArts win in availability and packaging. That's 3-4. The MonsterArts is the winner. Hold the phones. Hold the thing. Hold it all. I know technically speaking, this is the third time that the HIYA has lost. But this is really telling me that as far as like a point-by-point system goes, it's always the inferior figure for whatever reason. The Playmates won because it had more categories checked off thanks to the fact that it had the better packaging, the price, the availability, and what else did it win in? The size. Here, it's kind of like reversed with the better articulation of the two. And even then, I was really considering giving it to HIYA because, the range specifically, even though the MonsterArts does have a good amount of range, the HIYA can achieve more. But here's the thing. With the points I decide to give, it's clear that the MonsterArts wins. I'm not trying to make the HIYA intentionally lose, because I know that's what maybe some people might think. But in all actuality, I think that the HIYA is probably tied with NECA for my favorite. The MonsterArts is great. I love it. And, shout out to my dad for buying this. It's amazing. I'd be lying if I said that. Or I'd be lying if I didn't say that. But the HIYA, as far as quality goes, is just superior to that of the MonsterArts. There's no competition between the two. This isn't to say like the MonsterArts is better than the HIYA. In fact, objectively, I think he's better than him. But as far as the point goes, there's no line. Although I will say, as far as like the feel of the figure, since he's lighter, he doesn't feel as good to hold, if that makes any sense. I like a bit more weight with my Godzilla figures, and that's why NECAs and HIYAs have always been more, what's the word? It feels better in the hands, is basically what I'm trying to say. And with the articulation that you're getting, come on, just get this. So basically, my recommendation is, if you want to buy one or the other, go with the HIYA. I love the MonsterArts, like what they did, but just go with the HIYA. But with that being said, guys, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys liked it, definitely subscribe to the channel. Believe in Jesus. Set them as your Lord and Savior today. Spread the gospel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. God bless.